somewhere. I should have her draft bill.
Mr. Chairman, you are live.
Okay, we are live in the House Appropriations. We have two re-referrals. So let's deal with those real quickly. On the House Bill 51, after I noticed it, then I reviewed it. And so we're going to table the re-referral on House Bill 51. It has to do with COVID dollars. And yeah.
Oh, not House Bill 51. That's meat processing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, but it takes 20 million of COVID dollars to
Gotcha.
fund it. So we're not going to do that today. So put that back on the agenda. And I had a meeting with the committee chair because we're basically stacking any COVID-related dollars to handle them together and not have independent bills floating around addressing those. Okay, now let's go to House Bill 67. That's you. Is this the $9,000 issue? All those in favor? All right, can you explain us to the, Mr. Prior Speaker, what the appropriation is for this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appropriations for the cheapest task force of all time. I mean, because there's really no legislators on it. Those go up to 25, 30, 40,000 when you start getting 4 or 5 legislators. So you can see it's, and we've amended the bill, you know, it keeps changing as I started this deal with pumped hydro, like all bills, you bring constituents talk to you. Generally, it's not like we sit around and have every one of these 500 ideas for bill drafts. So people talk to you, and then pumped hydro, we amended that other bill. This hydrogen thing is now starting to gain steam at the national level. And so that bill is really to bring some smart people from these areas in Wyoming together, much like the Nuclear Production Task Force, which was more of a legislative task force. A couple of governors ago vetoed that. The next governor passed it. You know, we do, we're what do you call that, where we regulate our own uranium mining because of that bill. I know Walters knows, President Walters knows that, but so there's a lot of good that's coming out of that. And Wyoming has already got the laws ready for nuclear energy production. If modulars want to come there, all that stuff's in place. This is the same deal. It's the next frontier. We know what's out there, and we got to get smart people together. It all begins with talk. So I tried to do a task force on the light, and it's $9,000, and appreciate your consideration.
Discussion. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Chairman, go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bill before us must not include the amendment because it says 7,000.
Yeah, it's Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
It was amended in Minerals Committee because we added a hydrogen expert and to 9,000. Thank you for that catch.
Move the bill, Mr. Chairman. Do pass.
Any public comment? Anyone in the waiting room? Ryan?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment. Motion by Representative Walters, second by Representative Larson on a do pass. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson. Representative Schwartz. Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
And Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. Okay, with that, and while I eat, we will move on to House Bill 56. Senate File 56. Sorry about that. And Representative Walters, why don't you just give us a quick introduction of where we are with this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Senate File 56, the Wyoming Gaming Commission Modification and Corrections Bill. This is the same bill committee that we had the educational seminar on yesterday during the noon hour. And the good senator from here in Cheyenne, she walked through the bill. The changes that were made in the Senate side and to create the engrossed copy that we have before us today. And because we had such a good thorough walkthrough yesterday, I don't think we need to do a page turn walkthrough today, but would gladly answer any questions the committee might have before we get started with taking a little bit of public comment. And I think the public is well aware we had a good educational seminar yesterday, so hopefully the public would keep their comments short, concise, and to the point. But Mr. Chairman, with that, I think, like I said, I'm ready for any comments from the committee or public comment.
Okay, and so, yeah, our goal is to take public comment and then work this bill and kick this bill out by 2 o'clock. So that's kind of our time frame. And I have to eat my sandwich. So, so with that, public comment, please come on up. You want to?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Bill Novotny. I'm here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. I am a county commissioner in Johnson County. The WCCA supports Senate File 56 as amended. Wyoming Skills Games regulation and this framework really originated out of an issue that was going on in Natrona County. And from that, the commissioners worked diligently with industry, the executive and legislative branches of the state government to create a reasonable regulatory framework. And this legislation advances that. Our collective work also developed a revenue source for K-12 education and local government. But more importantly, an additional revenue source for small businesses struggling during the pandemic. And we should thank the skills game industry for the investments that it's making in Wyoming main streets and our communities. The WCCA supports removing the sunset on the skills-based amusement games. Further, the WCCA supports allowing for the prepayment of taxes. Yes, somebody in industry wants to prepay their taxes. And as a commissioner representing a county that is attempting to collect a lot of unpaid taxes, I firmly support this industry request to be able to prepay their taxes. Now, I understand that some members of this committee may want to discuss diverting the local government tax revenues to the schools. The WCCA requests that you oppose this effort, and here are some of the reasons. Counties, not schools, slogged through the development and the meetings to come up with the solutions to develop this regulatory framework and the approach to taxation. We must remain engaged in this process because it's going to be involved in our daily activities. So why you would remove our small source of revenue doesn't make a lot of sense. Of that revenue that local government receives, and I'd be happy to share specific amounts that your counties may have received under this, it would be inappropriate to switch that distribution because the burdens of this will fall directly on the counties. And here's why. When it comes to law enforcement, especially when prosecution is necessary, that is going to land flatly on the counties. With that, we also provide the mental health services for people who may be dealing with a gaming addiction. Again, without that little bit of additional revenue to help us offset these costs, you're pushing counties further back as we work to provide essential services. So in short, the commissioners and more broadly, the counties are very interested in seeing the Senate file pass. And we would just urge you to resist the temptation to take that small amount of revenue that is directed towards us to provide the essential services and some of the enforcement parts of these games away from us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and I would stand for questions between sandwich bites.
Questions? Bill?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, for Mr. Novotny, directing your attention to page 7 of the bill, engrossed version, lines 11 through 15, which I believe deal with the distribution, and I think you're familiar with the issue.
Thank you, Representative. Okay. All right.
So
So
page 7, lines 11 through 15, which I believe you were just referring to with respect to how the funds get distributed. The current draft says that if the machine or the operator is in a municipality, then 45% of the revenue gets split evenly between the county and the municipality. But if it's outside the municipality, then all of the revenue goes to the county. So my question is, say in my community, if you were to locate an operator at, say, exit 99 on I-80, that would be just a few miles outside of Rock Springs. The patrons who go there, they would go there, and if they drink alcohol and they're driving drunk back home, they're probably going to be driving back home to Rock Springs. So local law enforcement, or SPD, for example, is going to be involved in that. So my question is, why wouldn't it make sense to just say that the 45% should just be split evenly between the county and the cities, regardless of where it's located?
Mr. Chairman? Representative Smith, it goes back to the actual delivery of the law enforcement services. And those people are, like that instance that you indicated, is going to end up in district court. So when you're in that municipal boundary, and certainly if you'd like to direct all of the revenue towards the counties, I would not argue with you. The split, because of the work that is going to fall on either the county attorney's office, the county jail, our work with probation, parole, diversion, or with mental health, it would just seem more appropriate to that. And one of the situations that some people maybe don't contemplate is the fact in a town like KC, which has 4 churches, 2 bars, and a very nice cemetery. KC does not have any law enforcement. They rely solely on the sheriff's office for enforcement. And so, and they have these machines in there, yet we're going to still share revenue with them, even though they're not going to deal with any of the enforcements or any of the calls that are involved with that. You see that in Sublette County, where none of those municipalities have law enforcement. They all contract with their sheriff's office for those things. So I don't feel it appropriate, because the majority of the work is going to fall on the shoulders of the county electeds, whether it's the elected sheriff or the elected county attorney.
Further questions?
Mr. Chairman,
All right, seeing none?
All right, thank you, members of the committee.
Mr. Chairman,
All right, come on up next.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ryan. I believe Representative Kinner might have had a question.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mike Mosier, Wyoming State Liquor Association. We support Senate File 56 as amended. We also supported it before it was amended, and I'll get into why. There are over 300 reasons I'm sitting here in front of you to support this bill. None of them are my friends and colleagues sitting behind me. None of them are even in this building, because most of them would be illegal in this building. And that's the 300 plus businesses that have these skill games, the vast majority of them liquor retailers, bars, fraternal organizations, veterans organizations, clubs like that. These skill games are the reason why some of them are still in business. I owned a bar for years, for those of you who know me for a while, a successful bar. And watching this process through the pandemic, I'm absolutely stunned as many businesses as have survived. I can't imagine. This is the most difficult time to be in the liquor business since Prohibition. And these skill games were a lifeline, something we could rely on, a continuous sort of source of revenue when we were open. And so for that reason, we support this legislation. There are 2 primary issues to us. Number 1, of course, is the elimination of the sunset. There's basically a death sentence hanging over these 300 plus businesses, many of them who are still struggling, who are still relying on that revenue stream. Also, the moratorium on new games. I know there's some hesitancy. There's 2 different aspects of that, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. First of all, there were a number of businesses that had skill games, as you know, and then those skill games were declared non-compliant, and the Gaming Commission did not allow them to put in compliant machines through no fault of their own. Also, there's a number of businesses that didn't have skill games. I know of one in particular. One of the owners happens to be a retired person who sets and judges people. And he called me and he said, is there anything in statute that allows this? And I said, no, but there's nothing illegal either. It's kind of a gray area. It's before the, and he said, I'm not putting them in until they're legal. Well, we made them legal, but he can't put them in. And so I do think that's an important aspect. I will get into a couple other details and I'll finish up, but I do want to thank you, committee, because I know how hard you worked, because we all sat here to get 171 passed. And I want you to maybe think a little bit about what you did to save some small businesses, some livelihoods, because this bill did that. And that's why the sunset is so important. The amendments I'm fine with. You know, my concern, committee, is with those two concerns that we have, the sunset and the moratorium, that this bill get lost in a feud between skill games operators, kicking the snot out of the gaming commission, whatever. I know those are important issues to some, and I think it's laudable, but please do not lose sight that the most important thing are the people in your district that have used these machines to stay around. Of the amendments, the only one I'll really speak to that needs changed is the background information. The bit about, and I think you have an amendment to take the assault on another individual to a felonious one. A buddy of mine told me that, and I'm a bar owner, so I can say this, that we have a nickname for bar owners who've never been involved in a physical altercation. We call them restaurant owners. It's one of the inevitabilities. Unfortunately, some people are stupid and drink too much. And so the other aspect, of course, is the way it's written now is if you're a 19-year-old and somebody is physically rude to your girlfriend and you smack them and they press charges, the way it's written now, you couldn't have a skill game for the rest of your life. I think that's a little extreme, so I would support that aspect of the amendment. With that, and that's on page 9. With that, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I appreciate this opportunity. Once again, I thank you for your work, and I want you to remember what you've meant and your work has meant to these businesses. I'll take any questions.
Okay, questions for Mike?
Thank you.
Okay, next, please.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ryan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I apologize for the interruption. Representative Kinner had tried to ask a question earlier, and I'm not sure if the committee could hear him. So perhaps he could ask his question again now, or just wanted to make sure the microphone was working.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, really, it won't take long. I wanted to take Mr. Novotny up on his offer to provide us with the numbers that the counties have received. And if he also has the numbers the cities have received, I think I would like to see the updated information. And that was my request. Thank you.
And I think we asked for that yesterday as well. So,
And Mr. Chairman, I have the county information. I do not have the city information, but we could maybe work with WAM to get it. And I will provide this to the clerk.
yeah, would you just, provide it to Mary Lee and we'll get it circulated. Okay, Nick.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Nick Agopian. I'm here today representing Bankshot LLC. Bankshot is a company that operates skills games here in this state. They operate 174 machines, replace 174 machines across 12 counties. I'll be brief. For Bankshot, this bill represents a lifeline or represents some certainty, however we want to look at it. Without this bill, on July 1, my company will not be able to operate in Wyoming. And for us, what that means is they won't continue to pay taxes. For Bankshot, what we saw from May through December was the collection of nearly $400,000 in taxes, putting them on track, I believe, for just over $600,000 a year. And so that's the tax revenue that is at risk. And for my company, the opportunity to stay in business in Wyoming is why I'm here today. Did want to just take a quick moment. I don't have the history of working this issue in the interim or over the last 18 months or a little bit more. So I can't speak to a lot of the discussions during the interim. I can only speak to having engaged with Senator Ellis since she came on as Senate Chairwoman for Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife. And she's been very forthcoming in engaging with us with Bankshot and taking some feedback and walking us through what she's doing. And so we're here today to support Senate File 56 as amended, and certainly would echo the comments of those that came before me, Mr. Mosier especially. And with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Any questions? All right, appreciate your comments. Next.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Ryan Clement. I am one of the retailers or establishments that was denied games. I own a bar in downtown Cheyenne called Dillinger's. Instead of having a two-story bar restaurant with a full menu and 20 employees, you've got a husband and wife struggling to keep a bar open because our games were denied. Our preferred vendor, Patriot Games, followed all the rules, met all the requirements, and yet was still told by the Gaming Commission that we were inherent chance when we had a lab report saying we were inherent skill. And so driving in my U-Haul, moving my family from Denver on June 19th, listening to the commission hearing, you can imagine my shock at understanding that we were denied. I had to convince my investors who have invested heavily in downtown Cheyenne in real estate that if we hung on until Frontier Days, we'd be fine. Well, Frontier Days didn't happen. And so now, this bill gives us certainty in the marketplace for us, certainty with my investors that we can keep this operation going and that we can have a truly kind of incredible entertainment bar restaurant destination in downtown Cheyenne. And that's truly how much these games mean to small business. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. I stand for questions.
Questions? All right, appreciate it. Okay, anybody else? I'm now past my sandwich and on my cookie, so I'm moving along.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jonathan Downing and Catherine Wilkinson on behalf of Cowboy Skill and Pace-O-Matic of Wyoming. Thank you very much for your work, and it's almost deja vu minus these nice things here. Just briefly, we can live with the amendments that were proposed over on the Senate side, and this is just with respect to your question yesterday. Catherine can get in a little bit more detail if you would like on that end. But in the interest of time and making sure you all have time to work this bill, briefly, Cowboy Skill Games have generated over $2 million in tax revenue so far to the state of Wyoming. We do have some folks here. If you do decide at some point in the future, we've received some questions from committee members as far as what revenues might be looking like if you did expand or if you did remove the moratorium. But the most critical piece with this legislation right now is just ensuring that those companies have that security of being able to move forward, knowing that they can still be in business. And that's for some of the new folks. Our company had come to the legislature and had asked for regulation. They're normally, and I'm normally not a big guy on regulation, but in this situation, it was very necessary because regulation is often earned within industries. And so that, just as far as that history, I think that's important because it's seeking to make sure that there's a good quality, stable regulatory environment within Wyoming. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Wilkinson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Catherine Wilkinson representing Pace-O-Matic and Cowboy Skill. Mr. Chairman, in answer to your question yesterday regarding the specific amendments, I would tell you that we are okay with the direct being removed from the lab report. It is very critical, though, that the Gaming Commission does look at the lab report that has been submitted from the lab and not the operator. So I would just like to clarify that. Also on page 8, the amendments that were added for the 10-year look back and the felony, those are automatic denials for an operator, or I should say a vendor with the new terms in the bill. And so we do appreciate the amendments to walk back the second reading amendment from the Senate as proposed by Chairwoman Ellis to add the 10-year look back and the felony to the physical assault. And the last thing that I would point out is on page 17, there was quite a bit of discussion about the primary factor of skill language being in there. We do very much support that language being in there, and it was not messed with at all. And so just wanted to draw that to your attention, that skill, primary factor of skill, should remain in the bill. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I am happy to answer any other further questions, but in the interest of time, keeping it short.
Okay, appreciate it. Questions? Seeing none? Appreciate it. Anything
And
else?
just
Yeah, go ahead.
one last piece, just as a, missed this earlier, but want to be clear that we're open to additional competition within the marketplace. We're not going to be opposing that. We believe that's healthy for the marketplace.
Okay, great. Travis, fire away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilman Stephen Fasthorse from the Northern Arapahoe Business Council was planning on being here today with you, but because of a family emergency, he's now continuing down the interstate a little bit to Fort Collins. And so he asked me to share his remarks if I may. My name is Travis McNevin, and on behalf of the Northern Arapahoe Business Council, I share the following. By its nature, gaming. As expert regulators for our own gaming establishments, the tribe is intimately aware of the importance of robust regulations for maintaining the integrity of gaming operations. The Northern Arapahoe tribe supports a strong gaming commission and their ability to promulgate regulations and standards. It is the Gaming Commission's role to stay at the forefront of an ever-evolving industry. To this end, the Northern Arapahoe Business Council supports the additional direction, flexibility, and authority the Gaming Commission is provided in Senate File 56. The Northern Arapahoe tribe was one of the first entities to engage in the state of Wyoming with gaming. The tribe uses these revenues from gaming to fund tribal programs and government. Since the introduction of skill games in the state of Wyoming, the Northern Arapahoe tribe has seen a reduction in its gaming revenues. This reduction directly affects the tribe's budget and ability to provide essential programming to the Northern Arapahoe people. While we appreciate and recognize skill game bets and payouts that are appropriately limited, the one pause we have with Senate File 56 is it eliminates the existing June 31st, 2021 expiration date and makes these games a permanent fixture in Wyoming. The Northern Arapahoe Business Council opposes this permanent expansion of gaming. The tribe believes that it is too early to know the full impact of skill games on the state and tribal budgets. If the committee does determine additional time is needed, we suggest a 2-year extension until June 30th, 2023. A 2-year extension would allow both the state and tribe an opportunity to fully examine the effects of skill games prior to making them a permanent fixture in Wyoming. Thank you again for allowing me to testify on behalf of the Northern Arapahoe Business Council.
Okay, appreciate your comments. Any questions for Travis? Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chairman.
You bet. Okay, anybody else? Anybody in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, this is Ryan. I've admitted Director Moore from the Wyoming Gaming Commission into the room, and then I also have 3 others in the waiting room, but they haven't raised their hand yet.
Okay, Director, welcome.
Thank you, committee members. My name is Charles Moore, Director of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. I did submit to you this morning a suggested amendment, and I didn't know if you wanted me to discuss that now or if you wanted to take that up later.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. We've been in communication. It's on page 14, line 3 and 4. And the email that I sent your JAC office would be striking the language after K. So, or if otherwise required under Title 11, Chapter 25 of the Wyoming statute, strike that language. And the problem that's come up with that is the FBI has a problem with the vagueness of that. They want it to be specific. So that's why, they said to remove that language.
Okay, we took a note of it. Anything else?
Nope, that's it at this point. I am sending over the updated numbers for you on the skill-based amusement games, and thank you for all your hard work.
So you're sending those to the House Appropriations?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
There we go. Already got it. It's in your email box.
Okay. Any questions for the director? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the waiting room that has raised their hand, Ryan?
Mr. Chairman, none of them, you have three more in the waiting room, but none of them have raised their hands.
Okay, Ms. Ellis, any comments? Okay. Any other public comment? Any public comment? That will close public comment. We have a motion on the bill.
Move the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Representative Walters, seconded by Representative Schwartz. Discussion on the bill. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, before you, committee members, you should have received a proposed amendment. Top of it says 560802.
One second, let's see if I can wrestle it up.
So with that, I would move that amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Got it? All right.
Second.
802. Okay, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this amendment starts on page 2 in line 20. After the word state, we would be inserting before March 17th, 2020. And then on line 21, delete continue. Page 2, line 22, delete operation and insert operate. It's just really a technical cleanup there. Page 3, line 4, we would do the same thing on that, changing continue operating to operate. Page 3, line 18 is the discussion we had yesterday about directly, and it would delete the word directly. And we move on to page 8. And after guilty, on page 8, line 21, after guilty, insert within 10 years before the date of the filing of the application. This is that 10-year look back on these crimes. Page 9, line 7, we would insert felony after crime, or excuse me, before crime. Page 9, line 11, and this is inserting a little bit more language there. I don't need to read it all to you. You can read. And then page 9, line 13, this is dealing with the applications, making sure that when they're submitted, they have not been tampered with.
Okay, discussion on the amendment? Any questions about any of those changes?
I just want to, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So on that date change there, Representative Walters were just saying anything working within the state as of this time now will be able to operate moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really just to clarify what that date was. It was really the end of the session when the bill was signed by the governor. And that's when those session laws took effect for this particular section of the session laws. And so it's just a clarifying date. It was an assumed date, and this just spells it out. Senator Ellis might have a better description of that purpose, if you might, will, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify that further, I thought the reference to lines 20 and 21 on page 2, that was the grandfathering language of the 2020 session laws, those machines. I had some conversations with the Gaming Commission, and they were concerned that this was going to actually authorize new applicants to start submitting. And so I think that this additional language at their concern or request, I don't want to say they requested it specifically, but that was an issue we discussed. So we wanted to make it crystal clear what our intention was.
Okay. Any further questions?
Question on the amendment.
Question on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion carries. Any additional amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I would move the amendment that the good director was just discussing on page 14, line 3. We all have it in front of us in an email form printed out versus the typical format of a formal proposed amendment, but it still does the purpose again. So that's page 14, line 3. After the K, we would strike or if otherwise required, et cetera, and then strike all of line 4.
We have a second. Moved by Representative Walters, seconded by Representative Stiff. Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, that motion carries. Any other amendments?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I would move an amendment. It's on page 14, and I don't have a printed copy of the amendment, but there's an electronic version that was emailed to each of you just before the noon hour. But essentially, the substance of the amendment would be on page 14, on lines 14 through 16, to delete the new language. So the way the amendment's actually drafted by LSO, it deletes all of lines 6 through 22, because if you delete the new language, then you don't need to repeat the existing law. But the policy issue here is whether we want the Gaming Commission employees to have their own, police force.
Go ahead. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded by Walters. Go ahead. Discussion. Representative Larson.
So I had a question as I was reading that myself. So the officers employed by the Wyoming Gaming Commission, and I can't remember, since like we had asked this question before, are they post-certified? Do they have, and what authority do they have? Do they have authority within the counties of jurisdiction? Do they have statewide jurisdiction? Can somebody just kind of tell me how all of that works?
Mr. Chairman, this is Ryan, and I apologize for the interruption, but Director Moore did raise his hand. He might be able to provide some insight to Representative Larson's question.
We're looking at the screen. We're waiting on him.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, these are post-certified officers. We have 2 of them that are employed here currently. And this was a suggestion that came from retirement, and they're unable to access that plan without this additional language. They do have statewide jurisdiction when acting within the scope of the Gaming Commission's rules and regulations. Also, one of the issues that we run into is they are asked to assist in quite a few different situations as well. So they are fully authorized and authorized through this bill, peace officers. Thank you.
So to follow up on that, we had this discussion last year when this bill was being originally drafted. So Director, can you tell us where in the bill or what other parts of the law makes them law enforcement officers other than this language?
Thank you. Chairman Nicholas, they're authorized in session law and in our codified law to be peace officers. And this piece here is just the retirement piece that you're looking at. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Well, we kind of like to look at the law or the session laws you're referring to. So, and just for the, because of the time restraints, Representative Stiff, I wonder if this would be a better amendment, give you a chance to look at it and then bring an amendment from the floor. I'd probably support the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, so maybe you table it for now and perhaps bring it as a committee of the whole or first reading amendment.
I would suggest that we do that. Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a question for Mr. Moore. My recollection of the conversation last year was that there was a hesitancy on the part of local law enforcement to do the level of enforcement on the games themselves, and that was the reason we had these positions in the first place. So I'd like some refreshing of my feeble mind on that.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Nicholas, Representative Schwartz. That is absolutely correct. Local law enforcement, first of all, doesn't have necessarily the time and the energy to deal with bingo, pull tabs, skill, historic racing, or whatever. We currently have multiple cases to where we have dealt with and working with local prosecutors on again, 2 cases, I believe it is right now. Just the other day, our enforcement officers were up in the Newcastle area and identified some illegal terminals as well. So again, they're fully vested or fully authorized peace officers. They also are able to work at the racetracks as well and do that. So it's a big piece. The guys are authorized also through post, and like I said, post certified.
So, Director, if they are also working at the racetracks, then how would you allot their time in terms of separating duties, but also separating how they get paid from which pot?
Chairman Nicholas, that's a great question. Separating out these duties has been somewhat problematic at times, and separating out how those pay go across there. And that's what I think I've mentioned yesterday. We're working on delineating, the costs for the racetrack, the costs for the off-track wagering locations, and the costs with the skill-based amusement gaming. So we are working on that, and I should be able to have some of that to you over the next several weeks.
Further questions on that issue? So the amendment has been tabled, and we'll see if that brings itself back up at a later time. Any other amendments? I think we'll wait till, I'll do the same. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You should have before you another one that's a formal amendment from LSO titled 3803. And what this amendment does, it was in your packet here as you arrived. I'm not going to read through all of its insertions and deletions, but what this amendment does is it allows for skill-based games to be located in truck stops and places with liquor licenses, and it delineates the liquor licenses. And so what this does, in the existing bill, we cap the total games and games allowed within the state at what was here last year and approved by the commission. So there is, with this bill as it stands, there is no room for expansion. There is no room for a bar owner to switch from one manufacturer to another. And I just don't think it's appropriate for us to have waved the magic wand and said, these are the very select few that will be allowed to have these going forward. I think we heard from individuals today that discussed what a lifeline these entertainment games were to various bar owners. And since the ability to play is at age 21, tying those to liquor licenses makes sense. Secondly, I insert truck stops because truck stops are profitable and out-of-state money. It's folks coming through the state, spending their money, entertaining themselves for a short period of time while they're fueling up, and then they move on and travel on through the state. So it's a good way to generate revenue for the state on the backs of out-of-staters, and they generate good money. And so that's what the gist of this amendment is, without walking through every deletion and insertion. So with that, I would move the amendment and ask for your favorable consideration.
Moved by Representative Walters, seconded by Representative Schwartz. Discussion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. I'm just curious, I should remember this, but my feeble mind once again. Do we have a definition of truck stop in the statutes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Truck stops definition is listed in this amendment on the back of the page. So we don't have it in statute until we get to this actual amendment.
Okay. Further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
That motion carries. Any other amendments? I have one. Take it back. So on page 7, I would reduce the amounts to the cities and counties to 35%, and then add in 20% to the school foundation. Right. To 35. Correct. That's what I meant. Do I have a second? Second. I just, ladies and gentlemen, I think our biggest issue in front of us, and now and for the next 20 years, is going to be funding education. And anytime we have the opportunity to help resolve that thing, it's incumbent upon us to do it. So that's the basis of the motion. Discussion. Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I appreciate the sentiment. This K-12 budget is approximately, I'm going to say 1.8 billion for the biennium. So the addition of, I'm thinking $30,000 here, roughly something like that, compared to what it means to cities and counties who I think rely on this money more.
Do you want to amend the motion and make it 90%?
No, I think I'll just vote against your motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. Okay, any other motions? Any other motions? Question on the bill, roll call.
Representative Kinner,
Aye.
Representative Larson,
No.
Representative Schwartz, Representative Simpson,
No.
Representative Stith,
Aye.
Representative Walters,
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
5 ayes, 2 noes.
Okay, Tom, are you going to work this on the floor? All righty, sounds good. Thank you, Afi. Good work. Good work. Keep our fingers crossed. Okay, we made it. We'll stand adjourned.